Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob Robinson and episode number 3 of Philosophy from the Frontline. This week, I was privileged enough to have a discussion with Eric Engquist, who's the Vice President of USAA Brand Management. In short, Eric does a lot for veterans in his position at USAA. He works with more than 50 different veterans organizations that support military communities and drive awareness of those opportunities and services amongst current military members and veterans. It was an interesting discussion to talk to somebody who has transitioned from the military a lot earlier than I did, who's on a similar career path from the start. I enjoyed this conversation, and this is a great opportunity to talk to someone from a very large corporation that impacts not only our community, but veterans as well. I'm thankful and fortunate to Eric and to all the other guests that have signed up to be on the podcast. And I appreciate them giving up a little bit of their time to kind of pass on some information to you. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast as well, and we'll see you on the high ground. Thanks.
Welcome to Philosophy from the Frontline. This podcast explores the intersection of philosophy, entrepreneurship, and veteran transition. Join us as we delve into the minds of successful entrepreneurs who have made the journey from military service into small business ownership. Our guests will share their insights, experience, and unique perspectives on life, business, and the world around us. Through deep conversations and thought-provoking discussions, we hope to inspire and empower our listeners to tackle their own challenges and achieve their dreams. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the world of entrepreneurship from a veteran's point of view. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground.
Eric Engquist on the line. He is from USAA. He's the Vice President for Brand Management, and I have what I'm calling the Frontline 5. Those are the 5 questions that I sent you earlier. So let's just get into that. And so what made you decide that you want to come on this podcast? Because we're virtually unknown and we're trying to expand our reach. So it's glad to have you on board.
And thanks for having me, Rob. It's good to see you. We're classmates at West Point. Well, I don't have a real big Facebook presence. I know that you reached out. My wife was, part of the 97 class Facebook group account. And I noticed that you would look for some folks to talk about what they had experienced in terms of transition, and wondered if I would be interested in participating. I, jumped at the chance. Personally, having experienced it, most of us who are still not in uniform obviously have experienced it, but I have a particular interest and passion because for a while at USAA, it was a focal point of my career, helping service members successfully transition. So it's a personal passion point, and any chance I get, love to talk to folks about how to better prepare to separate from the military, whether it's a separation or retirement.
Yeah. And like I said, I've been incredibly blessed in my transition to find a job that puts you right back in the thick of things. We're working with folks at Fort Bragg. We're exercising, military law enforcement, DOD type of training and all the stuff that we would like to do that we're comfortable with, but it just happens to be in a small business on the corporate side. So it's kind of the best of all worlds kind of lining up for me. But I know that it's a very difficult and trying time. And looking at your bio, you transitioned in 2005. I know quite a few folks that were transitioning in that period of time. And that was a pretty tumultuous time for the military and pretty scary stuff. So again, second question is, when did you transition in the military or out of the military, and why? What was the driving force behind that?
Yeah, you said it was 8th anniversary of graduating May of 2005. I had just come back from a 12-month tour in Iraq. I've been in Korea for 12 months before that. I made the decision to get out, to get married, start a family. And that's what really made sense for me at the time. I love my service in the military. I still miss it to this day, but I know I made the right decision for me and my wife and my children now. So, while I don't regret it, I do oftentimes, think back to my military career fondly and miss those days. Coming out of the military, I tell people that I was the quintessential example of what not to do, which I think kind of fuels my passion for separation. I wish I knew just a piece of what I know now just through, experiencing it and then helping others through my work at USAA. But I was, out of a job and thought, well, it'll be easy to pick up a career after I get out of the military. And I was probably out 6 months. I'd gotten married, relocated here to San Antonio. And it wasn't until I had been picked up by a headhunter then gave me an opportunity to interview with several companies in a career fair that I was offered a job at USAA. And even then, I think the real reason why I got the job at USAA was that the boss that hired me was a former Army officer who went through Cameron Brooks, the same headhunter organization that I was being sponsored by. And he, in all honesty, took a chance on me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I think that's another thing that I've highlighted when I'm talking to anybody that's been a guest on the podcast is like the point of transition is so very personal that it's hard to describe. Like you can't say, well, what works for you or your buddy is going to be the exact same for somebody else in your organization. And, being on the outside of the Army now, it's like, yeah, I got to pass as much on as I could. And I used to tell people all the time, like, if I could stick my finger in your ear so you can learn everything that I learned right, wrong, or indifferent in 20 years, you could move forward. And that's such a very, very difficult thing to do because it's individualized. Your transition is not specifically tailored for you, but it's also very personal on why you're getting out.
That's right. That's
it makes for a very interesting time, and depending upon where your family is or what your goals are, it also changes the calculus on what you do as far as searching or looking for a job. So question number 3, of course, is what are you doing now? And if you can elaborate on what you do, because like your bio is pretty robust, if I can. Like when somebody reaches out or their executive assistant reaches out for them, it's like, whoa, okay, he's doing some things. Kind of tell us about what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, I've been working at USAA since 2005. I got out, started in October, so just hit my 14th work anniversary, which is amazing. Talk about time flying. I was brought on as a brand manager for brokerage, our investment company at the time. So I hired in marketing. Like I said, my boss had been an Army officer. He said, look, I'm not hiring you because of your marketing prowess coming out of the military. That's obvious. He said, what I'm hiring you for is your leadership experience. And at the time, he was really changing the nature of the marketing organization at USAA from a very stodgy, old school style of marketing where people had very long tenure at USAA. They had their own, personal designers for various marketing. And he wanted to make it a brand management organization with an ad agency of record and really bring it into best in class marketing organization for tremendous growth that was on the horizon for USAA. And so he needed change agents to help do that. He said, I'll teach you the marketing. I need you to be a leader and help lead people through change. So that's really what it came into. Steep learning curve into the civilian career, obviously. And USAA is an organization that serves the military community. They're very focused on understanding the military, but really only about 20-25% of the workforce have actually served themselves or are spouses of military service members. So while we really do recognize what it means to serve and understand the unique aspects of military life to better serve our membership, it is not a military organization. So there was also a personal learning curve on how to conduct yourself in a corporate environment outside of a military uniform. So, USAA has been a fabulous company for me, and I've grown tremendously, personally and professionally. I'm now the vice president of brand management and marketing. My teams lead all of USAA's marketing programs that run horizontally across the lines of business. So we have marketing specifically for our insurance company, our bank, life insurance company. I maintain the programs that run horizontal, like our national sponsorship, relationships with the NFL. We're a national sponsor of the NFL, several team deals there. We've got deals with the San Diego Padres and the San Antonio Spurs, as an example. I also manage our affinity relationships. So we partner with about 60 veteran service organizations like the American Legion, Wounded Warrior Project, VFW. We've got co-branded marketing programs and credit card programs with those organizations. And then we lead things like USA's onboarding all new members, come through an onboarding program with USAA, manage our content strategy, those types of things that run all the way through the lines of business and their respective plans.
Well, you make it sound like it's a small thing, but I'm sure that's a pretty huge responsibility. And there's a lot of different efforts that go with that.
Well, a bunch of good folks on my team that make it
I'm sure.
successful.
And I think that's part of one of the things that we really don't talk about, is finding the right place as a veteran, because, the people around you matter.
That's right.
And, one of the most alarming, I want to say alarming things, but one of the most interesting conversations that I had was with my first guest, and she's an '07 grad. And she mentioned how, she had done some work for a company, and then one of the senior marketing agents who had been there a while, civilian type person, took one of her ideas and ran with it to the CEO. And like, it hurt her to her core, because, when you grow up in the military, plagiarism is encouraged as far as like providing information to leaders. But when it comes time to like an idea or some, like, I won't say intellectual property, but something that could be useful to the organization, you kind of want to give credit to where credit is due. And she had to kind of deal with that situation. And it was one of those things that kind of was like, wow, that's shocking. And you don't expect that. I guess we're just so used to being in the shark tank of being an officer in the military or just serving in the military whatsoever, that those incidents are less likely to happen, or at least be less visible or impactful to the organization, just because it happens on a much smaller scale, I guess would be the way to say it.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really good point that it is a team sport, should be a team sport. You need to understand, what's important to you, the type of environment you want to work in, what industry best suits you. It comes down to fit. Really does. And I'll tell you, the best advice I got from my hiring manager was, we went out to lunch, kind of get to know you, first day or first week on the job kind of thing. And he was asking, having just come back from Iraq, what were you doing? And I was talking to him about my roles there, and he stopped me dead in the tracks, and he looked at me and he said, nothing you ever do from this point forward will ever matter as much as what you did in the military. And I said, sure, Sean, I understand what you're saying. He says, no. Let me say it again, nothing you do now will ever mean as much as you did in the military. And at the time, it just kind of went over my head. I said, sure, okay. But it's true, all right? You think about the awesome responsibility it is to lead men and women who are willing to give their all in defense of our country, the amount of control that a commander has in uniform, the immense amount of responsibility you have for all aspects of your soldiers' lives, right? Their personal lives, their professional development, their personal safety, right? Everything you do in a civilian world will pale in comparison. But what you will have to wrestle with is you don't necessarily find your identity through work, with the exception of some folks that may, go into a small business, create something on their own, right? You still have some identity in terms of what you do and why you do it. But in reality, it's just, you have to understand the corporate environment, the specific company's culture, and make sure that you are a cultural fit with that company. And if it doesn't mesh, there's no amount of money that a corporation can pay you to make it worthwhile. And it takes a while to really understand that or learn that until you're actually in it.
Wow, that's a great point, and very eloquently stated too. I think that's one of the things. Like, my big thing was like, hey, I just want to wear khakis and a polo shirt. I don't want to wear a uniform every day, and I'm kind of wearing the alternate Army uniform, which is khakis and polo. But from a perspective, it's being around good folks, and that's really, I lucked into I super lucked into this job. We have everybody here is a veteran, with the exception of the president of the company, and he's an Army brat, so he understands kind of the trials that we all go through. So it makes it, a great opportunity for me. And again, it was one of those things, luck and chance, and somebody's looking down on me and saying, hey, look, this is the right fit for you. And I know that was one of the things, and it seems like you managed to do it as well, is to find, the spot that you're going to hang your hat for a while coming right out. And I know a lot of people struggle with that transition. They go to their first or second opportunity, and then they get to the third or fourth one, and then they're finally happy. But I think what you said about finding the right fit for you is the way to go at it. Because I think the caution is, and I think you could probably speak better to this than I can, is like a lot of junior military officers chase the money rather than the fit. And then it becomes, like you said, they can't pay you enough money to enjoy what you're doing if you don't really enjoy it.
That's right.
So So
I would just say, a couple things on that. Part of it comes from proper planning, right? If you've got a plan before you get out, ideally, you're going to make the right decisions rather than the necessary decision. Like I'm already out. I'm desperate. I just need a job, and that's when you get a lot of folks that are, finding as many jobs in the first 2 or 3 years, as the years, right? So 6 months, 12 months, move to a new job. You want to avoid that at all costs. I think the other empowering thing is to understand what the purpose of an interview is. And it's not necessarily for you to just prove yourself to that company. You should take that opportunity to, of course, explain why you're the best candidate for a particular position. And you've got the right skills and experience to excel and exceed their expectations. But take the opportunity to learn about that company, about the corporation itself, everyone who works there. And you're interviewing them. Do you want to work there? And once you kind of understand, you can turn the tables and interview as two ways. It's pretty empowering, and it enables you, I think, to make a more well-informed decision.
Yeah, wow, that's a great point. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, because there is some flexibility that we have as leaders that have transitioned versus being a leader that's in. Because sometimes you have your blinders on because your mission is your priority, and then after you transition, everything becomes a mission, of a sense. And so it kind of, it's a luxury to be able to do this, but it's also, I think it's important and informative for people to just get a new grasp on, some opportunities that are out there and just, take your time. I think a lot of people want to rush into the next big thing and don't jump into it unless you're ready, and some people have the opportunity to do that, others don't, and it just depends on where they are. But if you're in panic mode, like I got to keep the lights on and feed the kids, you may make a decision that's not as informed as another one. So that's a great observation.
Yeah, it should never be a last minute decision. I mean, short of getting military retired, right, because of an injury or unforeseen event, everything should be planned out. And 12 months, 18 months out is when you should actually start your transition. Mentally, you should start getting your network established. You talked about social media, the power of LinkedIn, and those are really important. You can't rely on your immediate network, like your former JOs that get out, or your commander, or some of your mentors. They're all trying to figure it out themselves, right? You need to really reach out far and wide. People who separated or retired years before you, so that they can give you real understanding and insight into various industries that you might be interested in, locations across the country, tips on successfully transitioning, interviewing, how to translate your skill sets and your experiences into civilian speak so that it's readily understandable to a civilian hiring manager. Those are the things that take a while to kind of hone and practice. And then, of course, you also need to make sure that you've saved up enough for, for me, 6 months of unemployment, really. My wife was working, but that obviously puts strain. And then you're at risk of making a bad decision because of the immediacy or the exigency of, trying to find a job. So ideally, whether you're separating after your first term of service or retiring after 20 years, the folks that are listening to this and planning their exit are about 12 months at a minimum from pulling the pin and doing some things necessary that we could certainly talk about.
Yeah. I mean, straight up, I know that's one of the things that I have enjoyed about being it, say, hey, they have a lot of tools that are kind of self-help. You can go to the website and kind of look through some of the things like planning for retirement. Mm-hmm. Are you buying a house? Are you buying a car? And it seems kind of mundane. It's another checklist, but guess what, military folks, you're used to using checklists. It's an open book test. So you might as well, think about it at least and check it out to see if there's, if it's worth your time, energy, and effort to get set up. And one of the great things about USAA is you can always call, and there's somebody on the other end of the line that can actually help you. It's not a bunch of push button directory type of stuff. So I can appreciate it, unpaid, unendorsed plug for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I didn't want to come in there and talk about my company, but objectively speaking, we have put a lot into that. And we talked off camera about, I was fortunate to stand up a lot of the military transition programs that exist at USAA today because of our recognition that our members were in financial dire straits within 6 months of virtually any what we call transition in the military, not just separation, but it's PCSing, deploying, and then, of course, separation and retirement. They put great financial strains on military service members, certainly their families. And by the time our members were calling us asking for help, it was already an emergency. And so we were limited in what we could do to assist members. If we were a little bit earlier in their decision cycle, we could assist them proactively. And so we developed those tools and trying to get out in front of our members so that, we weren't trying to help them make the decision. That's like you talked about, very personal, right? Why you're separating, where you're separating to or retiring is a personal decision. But once that decision is made, here are the things that you need to be doing in order to exit the military in the best financial position possible. And that goes with being able to interview for a job, transitioning into a civilian career, having savings and those types of things. So that's where my expertise in transitioning came from, and learning it at a financial services company. It certainly wasn't because I did the right things on my own separation.
Yeah. I can tell you that there's a 1,000 dudes out there with 10,000 different directions that you should go. And again, the reason why I stress the personal portion of the transition is because just because a tool works for you, as the individual does not mean it's going to work for somebody else. It's, one of the things that is always a bone of contention for a lot of people when they separate. And this is something that you have to think about a lot is the survivor benefit plan, So you'll have some people that will say, oh, you shouldn't take it because, it's going to take too much money out of your account and you could do other things, or you could buy property, or you could do this, or you could do that. But there is a perspective that says, hey, look, if you've been making those investments your entire life and buying those properties and all those other things, a $200 investment out of your paycheck every month that's going to secure your wife an annuity versus, a life insurance policy that's going to pay out one time, it's going to get taxed, taxable income being taxable income. But which would you rather have, a constant trickle, that comes in every month? Or do you want to have it from a big bucket that could be, manipulated, changed, bad investment because you have the liquidity right in front of you? And so that's one of the things I know. And I got to do some hunting on to find some people that are, anti-SPP folks to talk to them. And then the other part of it is it really is from the position that you're in. So if you're a sergeant first class or a master sergeant transitioning at 20 years versus a colonel at 23 or 24, that's two different kinds of pools of transition money, right?
That's right.
You look at, 55% of a colonel's pay versus 55% of a master sergeant's pay. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, the disparity between officer and enlisted pay. But you have to consider those things at your jumping off point when you get out of the Army. Again, personal decision, and I've noted that in a lot of the conversations that I have with people that have transitioned, half of them say, oh, take the SBP because it's easy, right? It's easy insurance. You don't have to worry about it, but it's money that you're never going to get back. But if you go to the briefing and you listen, there's all these loopholes that allow you to get out of it if, something in your life changes, your disability rating changes or anything like that, or, you're stuck with it. But again, is it as bad? Because if you're 100% disabled from the military and you try and get an insurance policy, I guarantee you're going to pay just as much or more as you would for the SBP to get any type of valuable coverage for long-term in your family. And again, I can't make that decision for anybody. It's personal, but it's just one of the things that I needed to bring up to talk to somebody that kind of knows. And you being a veteran transition person and understanding that could probably shed some light on that.
Yeah, I think you always talk about the cost benefit associated with that. What you also have to recognize is, are you going to have the discipline on your own to invest that money and make it work as hard as it would in the future potential of the SPP? Or not, right? A lot of people claim, oh, I'm going to take that money and I'll invest it and I'll earn as much, if not more, on market or in real estate or what have you, so that we'll have a good nest egg. If and when anything happens to me, my family's still taken care of. But in reality, people don't do that, right? You start taking the income. I'm going to start spending. With every paycheck increase, you start just expanding your quality of living, and it's really hard to take that money out and put it somewhere where it will work for the future if you get into that near-term habit. So it takes discipline. I think if you have a plan to our earlier conversation on how you're going to use that, as opposed to just putting it towards SPP, because you take it out with SPP, you've never really seen it. You'll never miss it, right? But it's that nest egg or that peace of mind that's there when you go. So I would strongly encourage people to consider that. But again, you're right, it's a personal decision.
Yeah. I mean, I've had, I don't know, at least 20 people, and both of them are 10 and 10. Half of them say take it, the other half don't. And I think, again, it goes back to, what's your potential earnings or whatever.
Right.
Well, we kind of already hit, question 4, which is the hardest part for you coming out of the military. And, and then the hardest part coming into the new job, and like, those are two of the big kind of the hanging questions that we kind of need to answer. But I think the discussion has been pretty good so far. But when you finally decided to pull the plug, like on your Army career, how did that go for you?
It was tough, right? I tell people again, I don't remember if we're on camera, like I was the quintessential example of what not to do in transitioning from the military, right? I didn't do anything right. I didn't have a plan. I was overseas. I had to make the decision because there was a tight window between stop losses when, you redeploy.
Oh, wow, that's right.
I didn't even do my exit physical. So, they said basically we're so backed up that if you do your exit physical, then you're going to be stop loss and you won't be able to get out anyway. So I signed a waiver and never even claimed for disability or I never got rated, nothing. Separated and walked. I was gone within a month of redeploying from overseas, and of course, still no job. I thought it would be easy to roll into a career, and went about 6 months. And in the intervening time, I moved to San Antonio because that's where my wife was. My fiance at the time, we got married, started a family. So I mean, it was like a lot of personal challenges, and then in the form of just major transitionary life events, right? But I was very fortunate to interview and get a job at USAA, which kept us in San Antonio, which was unique, right? That's one of the things I think I would encourage people. Separation, again, we say it again, a very personal decision. A lot of the decisions you will make are personal based. You may have a reason for where you're going to live post-separation or retirement from the military, whether it's to be closer to family, whether your spouses or your family. You have other personal concerns, right? But if the career is not pulling you to a specific location, you should find a job first and move to the job. You shouldn't focus on where you're going to move and then consider your career, because you're isolating yourself from invariably 97% of the job market. And so, like I said, I moved to San Antonio and then got a job, which kept me here. And that was very fortunate. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But if I could flip that on its head, it would have been to look for a career and then allow that career to take me wherever. Because again, you build up these really great attributes over the course of a military career. Your adaptability, your agility, your learning agility, going to a new job. It's all OJT. You're PCSing, you hit the ground running. You get really acclimated to new environments, new work environments very quickly. You should not lose that perishable skill when transitioning from the military and expect that, everything should be sedentary. You should maintain that edge, if you will, looking for a career and then moving to a new environment. You embrace that adaptability, you're going to be successful. That was probably the hardest thing, though, I think, is that period of unemployment, just because of decisions that I made, again, for a very personal reason. And it turned out for me in a fortunate way. But again, it was a lot of luck and fortuity.
And again, not everybody has a good ending to that story. And when you look at the number of homeless veterans or veterans that have lost everything. And, it could be as simply as I was out of work for 6 months.
That's right.
And support system matters. And I think that's one of the things that we all fail to realize how robust the support of the military actually is until you're away from it, and then like you're responsible for medical and dental and all the other, normal, you get an email from the MedAC saying, hey, you got to go get your physical, or you get your Red Pros, red dot on your AKO telling you it's time for you to go get your gum scraped at the dentist. But, you don't realize how much of that is just kind of automated because of the apparatus for the military. And then it's like, whoa, like I'm responsible for all of this, and it's like, oh, if you have a pay inquiry, you can't walk into finance and do it. You have to kind of like pick up the phone and make some phone calls, shoot a couple emails, and, just kind of narrow those things down. But wow, I really appreciate you coming on though, because this has been fun. It's been a while since we've seen each other too. I think I want to say we were in IOBC together. Either you were right behind me or right in front of me, or we were there at the same time, but I know we were betting at the same time. And it's just always interesting to see people that kind of lead before you do and still come out on the other side, because like I said, everything's been coming up Robinson for the last year or so, just because with my transition. But again, there's a lot of legwork that went unseen by a lot of folks. And it's like, man, this guy retired and has a job already. And it's like, it wasn't that easy.
No, it's not. You don't blow into anything. It takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of commitment. So congrats to you, Rob. I'm glad you're doing well. So
yeah. And like I said, one of the cool aspects of the job is being able to talk to people that are corporate and small business, or just veterans in general, and kind of shed some light on things that like we don't talk about, or we didn't talk about. We spent 23 years in the Army, and rarely, if ever, I can remember like a legitimate discussion with a senior leader going like, hey, what's your plan after the Army?
Yeah, and that's a shame. You think about what a new responsibility is, right? And think the military does a great job, and I love my time in the military. The military's job is to get people inculcated into the military culture, get them trained and able to perform mission to an expected level, right? It's not their role to prepare them for the civilian world, but if leaders take it upon themselves to ensure that their subordinates are ready for a successful transition, I think it pays. It comes back to you in droves, right? Those are the same people that you can reach out to in retirement and say, look, how has it been? Do you have any recommendations? Can you get me in touch with folks in your industry or in your company? I'm interested in these roles. And so it does come back, and it's unfortunate, and I think it's hit or miss whether the military is successful at transitioning service members at all stages of their career. So that's why I never, ceases to amaze me that there are so many people that are struggling. And likewise, why it's so heartwarming to see guys like you that made it a career and are successful in transition and still maintaining that passion and going back to passing it along and creating forums like this. So, folks that have done it and made tons of mistakes and scraped our knees can provide some insight to hopefully alleviate pain for others that are coming behind us.
Yeah. I mean, we all learn from blunt force trauma. Good thing that some of us, some of us more than others, but I will tell you, just talking to some of the folks that I've talked to so far on this, podcast, it's like, I've had a guy that, had to start his own business because he got himself in trouble and ended up, with some legal stuff that kind of forced him into a position, well, if I don't, create my own business, I don't eat, so he's working for himself, which is, everybody wants to be their own boss, but, sometimes you don't want the conditions to dictate
That's right.
how you choose your career field rather than kind of building it yourself. Like, so this is probably the most probing question that I'm going to ask you out of all of them is, if you could pick two leaders in your life, one good and one bad, what are the most valuable lessons that they taught you? And of course, you don't have to name any names, but if you would like to expound on some of those, that would be very interesting.
Man, throw me a curveball. Uh, yeah, the worst leaders that I had were ones that were kind of tyrannical. They were the ones that were centrally controlling all decision making and kind of hoarded information and only doled out the information necessary. I think I learned through negative reinforcement that wasn't the type of leadership role that I wanted, and I think it served me well in my transition to the civilian career as well, right? Because it goes back to it's a team sport, and I approach my team and being as transparent as possible because I feel that is being transparent and open and what's going on. You give them broader information. You broaden their perspective on their left and right, and they're making a more well-informed decision. And they're also providing you feedback on how to make a more well-informed decision. And everyone's, I think, better off for it. So I think I had a commander that was really centrally controlling of information and centrally controlled decision making that I've focused on not doing. Conversely, I had leaders, commander in particular, brigade commander, that was really big on mentorship and looking at the responsibility of a leader as beyond just making decisions or ensuring that the organization has the tools and resources necessary for mission accomplishment or success. He took a personal vested interest in everyone's personal and professional growth. And I think, certainly it's a time suck. But again, you recognize the ones that are willing to lend a hand, to give insight and experiences that they had, provide you, I think, additional tools for your future success. That makes the organization stronger. And certainly, all the commanders in the organization were imbued to really follow him, not just because he was really talented as a commander, but because he personally cared for everyone in his command. It made a stronger unit. And again, that's something else I've tried to take with me, ensuring that I always make time for mentoring opportunities, both internal to my company, within my team, the folks that directly report to me, but others that always take time to provide insight or guidance for other people's success.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, and one of the things, like the biggest takeaway that I had a discussion with one of my bosses at one point was, what's your legacy, right? And if your legacy as a leader is, I got all these medals, or I got all these promotions, or if you're starting conversation with that letter, then you're probably not doing it right. If you can look to the past and say, oh man, unbelievable, this guy's a command sergeant major now, and he was a PFC in my platoon, or wow, this guy, is a colonel. Holy moly, like, where did that come from? The day that I really kind of realized that I needed to get out was when I saw one of my platoon leaders had made 05 and was taking our OTC program. But it's like, okay. But, from a perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, you're long in the tooth, Rob, it's time for you to go. But the other part of it is, it's like, well, you train this guy and he's been successful, and now he's going to be mentoring and developing a new batch of lieutenants. So it can't be all bad.
That's right.
And that's kind of how I look at things, and I kind of keep that open-ended perspective. And I appreciate, people that can kind of see that. And it's good to see that you continue to mentor folks, even in your current position, because I'm sure with everything that you do throughout the course of the day, it could be something that could easily fall to the wayside, and having those personal discussions. And I like to say this all the time, we could fix 90% of the world's problems by the water cooler. It's just, executing those things once we get away from it. But having a good dialogue between leaders and subordinates and peers is a great way of doing business. And it's pretty awesome that you continue to do that.
Thank you.
And then I have one last thing that I'm going to ask you.
All right.
This is a time for your any shameless plugs that you want to put out. Is there any information or any places that we need to go to find more information about some of the programs that USAA has for veterans? And definitely what I'll do is I'll capture those and I'll put them in the podcast description so people can kind of dive in and do a little bit more exploration on their own.
Oh, I appreciate that. This, like I said, we're not paying for any advertising, but I am aware USAA does have military transition support. In fact, one of my former roles was creating checklists and trying to be a little bit more proactive so people make more well-informed decisions. They're on USAA.com. Like if you go to USAA.com/leaving the military, you can find some of those tools and resources, but under the advice section, there's a lot of content for all facets of military life, whether you're PCSing, you're deploying, retiring, separating. USAA is really passionate about serving the military community. I do know that for, firsthand knowledge and assisting me in my separation. But then, as an employee, the company really is member-centric and mission-driven. So there's the shameful plug on opportunities with USAA. But I would encourage folks, podcasts, if they're ingesting content like this online, there's a wealth of information. Reach out to your peers, reach out to alumni associations, your friends. Don't hesitate to ask for assistance and, really insight and recommendations on what was successful or what did they do that allowed them to be successful, and what did they do that they would never want to repeat again. Because I think you learn from others' experience to avoid those challenges and achieve those successes.
Yeah, and that's great. And I appreciate it. Once again, I say this to everybody. I thank you for coming on. This has been a thing for our discussion. Yeah, we're pushing 40 minutes. I try and keep it under an hour because anything more than that is a little bit of a training distractor for folks. But I really appreciate your time today, and this was good. And I appreciate you coming on and giving some insights and just talking and just to get to catch up, man, because I know it's been over 20 years since we've seen each other.
Yeah, that's good to catch up.
Yeah. So as always, we will, I'll bundle this thing up and throw it out to the interweb and give people an opportunity to kind of check it out. I'll throw it up on the class Facebook page so everybody can make fun of it.
Look at that little man out there.
Yeah, I think we have a couple of old fans of me at the cadet radio station that may still be out there, but I really appreciate you coming on. And
thanks, Rob.
It's been great. Now I'm going to end this and we'll catch everybody on the high ground.
Thanks for listening to Philosophy from the Frontline with Rob Robinson. We will bring you more interesting veteran transition stories, veteran advocacy, and more information in veterans transition in general on a podcast platform near you. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Thanks.